This is T. Corman of the SCP Foundation, continuing Dr. Campbell's request. SCP-2566, also known as Evermore. Object Class Safe. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-2566 is to be kept in a low-value item locker. Access to SCP-2566 is restricted to research personnel level 2 and above. Description: SCP-2566 is the head of an Italian male in its mid-50s. The object has been severed from the digastric muscles to a point between the 5th and 6th cervical vertebrae, and its eyelids and tongue have been surgically removed. Despite this, SCP-2566 is alive and animate. The object requires neither sustenance nor rest, and does not appear to undergo cellular senescence, or senescence, whatever the fuck that word is. Due to the effects of both sensory deprivation and long-term isolation, SCP-2566 is cognitively impaired and unable to communicate. Recovery. The building where SCP-2566 was found had been partially destroyed due to heavily flooding and high winds in the wake of Hurricane Sandy. SCP-2566 was originally contained in a wooden crate. Nails driven from the underside of the box kept the object in place, and an albumin print photograph of a prepubescent female was affixed directly across its point of view. Several dozen newspaper clippings from 1878 to 1892 were layered around the interior of the box. See Addendum Rec Doc 2566. Okay, I do have that addendum here. An investigation into the property where SCP-2566 was recovered revealed that it had been abandoned for decades. The last known occupant was a Vincent Beaufort, POI 273, who was reported as missing in 1893. Research into POI 273's history prior to obtaining citizenship in the United States remains inconclusive. Several universities throughout Switzerland and Germany had records of a Dr. Beaufort among their academic staff as a professor of various scientific disciplines throughout the 19th century, with the earliest known record being a tenure at the University of Basel circa 1801. Okay, and here's Addendum Rec Doc 2566. Some of the excerpts from the articles that were kept in the box with the head. Date: June 17th, 1878. Publisher: Algenhe Weekly. Tragedy, horror, a killer walks among us. It is with a heavy heart that we turn our readership's attention to this assuredly sordid and ghastly tale of a crime most foul perpetrated against the very future of our nation, the effects of which have stricken our community and left profound tragedy in its wake. On Wednesday night, authorities responding to reports of suspicious activity made a gruesome discovery in a local house owned by the late Abigail Wright. Officers McAllen and Winifred were greeted by the stench of death and decay upon entering the domicile, and discovered in the basement of the aforementioned tenant, slain and unceremoniously disposed of alongside the remains of at least 3, as of yet unidentifiable, children. Though the full details have yet to be released, a spokesman from within the precinct relayed to the press that the killer had slaughtered the occupant and had been delegated her home for the apparent purpose of feeding on the nabbed babes. The mayor has established a curfew at 7 o'clock, while authorities throughout the neighboring counties search for the fiend responsible for this abhorrent act. Our prayers and condolences go out to the victims and their families, and we hope for the swift apprehension of the responsible individual. Those with any information pertaining to this crime may contact their local sheriff's office. Let's see, the next one. Okay, looks like we have 3 of them here. Alright, date, September 18th, 1892. Publication, the Philadelphia Herald. Allegheny Eater. Trial conclusion. Alberto Aquila to face execution. A dark chapter in American history has finally come to a close. The previously renowned philanthropist, Alberto Aquila, who was discovered this past May attempting to dispose of his final victim, faces execution for his crimes against humanity. His lawyers tried in vain to excuse his murders as the work of a diseased mind, as he attempted to justify his actions with the deranged belief that he could indefinitely prolong his life by consuming youthful flesh. The court, however, found the defendant to be competent enough to dismiss these claims, has found him guilty in all regards, and has sentenced him to death, continued on page 3. And the last one. Date, September 21st, 1892. Publication, Philadelphia Herald. The Horror Unleashed. Allegheny Eater has an accomplice. A manhunt is underway for convicted child slayer Alberto Aquila, who escaped custody last night with the assistance of a masked individual. The masked man struck in the dead of the night, cutting power to the temporary facility where Aquila was being held. I wasn't able to react in time, says Officer Wilde. Next thing I know, Carmichael is on the ground beside me, unconscious, and I have a gun in my face. The man commanded him with a distinct Swiss accent and forced to unlock the killer's cell, setting the murderer free and locking the officer in his place in a twisted perversion of the social order. The masked man absconded with the felon, and the duo made their departure, disappearing into the night. Wilde was released some time later, and Officer Albert Carmichael was attended to for his injuries. The assailant was described as of average height and build, and spoke with a broken accent which was described to be of Swiss origin, or possibly hailing from the Germanies. The officer continued on page 11. Well, I don't know about you, Dr. Campbell, but it sounds like we've found the head of the man who was seeking immortality by eating children. Well, his plan worked. That's pretty much the only credit you can give him. Holy shit. Just right when I start to think we don't have enough weird, useless crap sitting around. Oh, it's a severed head that's alive, sure, but should it be? But either way, that's not up to me, Dr. Campbell. That was SCP-2566, Evermore.